Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Not In, All In. I believe this is the 7th episode. I hope I got that right because I don't want to have to edit this out again like I just did something about 5 seconds earlier. I'm Kirk Buchner. I run this joint, notinhalloffame.com, and I'm here with Chris Mouradian. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Kirk. How you been?
Living the dream all day, every day. And Dave Whitlock.
Yeah, this is great. So many good sports on right now. This between May and really the end of the NHL and NBA Finals. There's just so much going on.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to get to that in a little bit because right now in both hockey and basketball, I think we kind of know where that's going to play out for the finals, and it should be very unique. But something that hasn't been talked a lot about, because I think a lot of people don't really know how it's going to play out. The NFL, surprisingly, I think, has said to their players, hey, if you want to go try out for the flag football, go ahead. And a lot of people online are not huge fans of it. And I get that, because if you're a fan of, like myself, the Saints, Chris, you the Packers, you the Texans, you don't want one of your star players tearing an ACL when they're trying to juke. We don't want it. I don't. Well, I think my Saints are in salary cap hell, so I'm not expecting a good season anyway, even in 2028. But regardless, most of the commentary has been, yeah, I don't really want one of my guys doing that. Other people will say, actually, most people aren't really saying anything because I don't think they even know how this works. From what I can tell, there's only 15 spots on a roster. And I could be wrong, and people can comment, leave a comment if I'm wrong on this. But I think every roster will have 15 players. There have been world championships before, which in the last 5 have been dominated by the United States on the men's side. They haven't won them all. You think they would have, but they haven't. And the last 3 in the women's side, I might have that backwards, but either way, the Americans are on a roll as of this discussion. I would imagine that the NFL is doing this because they're trying to put together a flag football league and they're going to front it. I don't know that there's any money for a men's, maybe a women's. What do you guys think?
Now, I'll kick it off. So there's a lot of layers to this. You started with which certain players play or not. And I remember in my glory days of athleticism and intramural football in college, the number of injuries that would happen. Now, part of it was you're dealing with a bunch of amateur college kids that don't know what they're doing. So they're running into each other, heads are hitting. In fact, one time I split the back of my head open. I had a cut here because I collided with somebody. I had another friend that had a concussion, and there's reaching for flags and tearing off fingers. Well, not tearing off fingers, but getting fingers caught.
Well, that I'd pay to watch.
Yeah, right. Well, as your star wide receiver, that may not be a good thing when he's doing something. So I think that one might say that the risk for injury is minimal. It's flag football. What's going to happen? But the cuts are intense for receivers. When you're reaching, when your big bodies are jumping for the ball, you're going to land wrong. So I think that is part of the case. Most other major sports, we could probably say other hockey, basketball, have international tournaments where the same things can happen, right? Mm-hmm. We see injuries in the playoffs. We saw some key injuries to the Celtics in the playoffs. So what's to stop? We have a 4th person joining our broadcast.
Oh, yeah, that would be Winnie the Jet. She's just sort of show up here.
That's part of it. And then you see exhibition games like the NFL Pro Bowl that aren't entertaining. Then you see what hockey did this year, where there was literally fights just because they cared that much. So I don't think you see fights, but I think the injury possibility is appreciable. I could understand fans not wanting their folks to participate. I could see it maybe making more sense for some, UFL level players, some college players that quite didn't make the cut. They will do fine. I think that would make more sense than having some superstars out there that have these contracts and really franchises on their back. So I'll leave it at there on the injury front. There's more layers to it. Would America dominate? What would it look like? But my first thought is who would participate and what would it look like? And I think that would be my model.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100% on the injury front. There is some precedent there. I did look it up while you were laying it out there. I don't know how many of us remember, but Robert Edwards, running back for the Patriots, uh, rookie rookie at the Pro Bowl, playing in the flag football game, blows out his knee, never really plays again. So um, it can happen. It's obviously there's a risk with anything you do, but better safe than sorry, I guess. My opinion on it is send a team out there that's been playing together, that knows each other and knows what's expected from the game, instead of taking NFL players that are geared for their sport, their what's needed for their sport, and dropping them in and trying to put together a dream team, super team, whatever you want to call it, of all pro type NFL players that don't play together. I think this is prime for a. Is there an actual league of this? I know there are.
There's championships.
Yeah, so there are teams that are already together. Let them go. Take the best team from there and send that over as to represent America.
And that's what a gentleman named Daryl Doucette has been saying. He's 35 years old. He is the quarterback for the United States team, the current team that actually exists. And needless to say, he's pissed off. Not necessarily because, well, he didn't say that he doesn't think that he can't beat them, but it's mostly just like, well, I've been doing this for years. My teammates have been doing this for years, and it's not the same game. It's a completely different game. I mean, like, just think about because I'm in Seattle. Think of Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch will run right at you. Well, pretty easy to get the flag off him, then, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics. You didn't see NBA players playing. In the United States, I don't think did particularly well.
Well, we didn't watch it. I don't even know. I mean, I think there were a couple ex-NBA players on it, maybe, but I don't remember.
It's a completely different game. It's half court. Running up and down is no good. The athleticism part, it's more about isolating shots and things like that, which they could do great. But I think you're right. I think you'd have to work at it at a level that would detract from, these days they're already in OTAs right now in the NFL. It's a year-round thing. They get the rookies in. There's playbooks. There's studying all. So, agree. With both of you. I think that NFL players probably. Their athleticism certainly would be superior to some of the people that are playing now or focusing on it. But as a team game, as Chris said, let's focus on guys that play together as a team, because that's an important element. We've seen lots of football teams that lacked in talent but played together as a team, beat teams with more talent that couldn't pull it together because of egos or lack of coaching or whatever.
I assume that if Goodell's doing this, he wants some players to do this.
From a marketing standpoint, it makes sense. We want to see some of the best players, and what's happened with the Olympics and the NBA and the pros has dramatically increased the game. That France-USA final was incredible for the popularity of the game, and you'd like to see something like that. It's just different. I don't think that's going to happen.
You know who the biggest loser in all of this is? And no one's talking about it, but I will. There's only one player, ex-NFL player I know, who's talked about openly wanting to go into the flag football in the Olympics. Colin Kaepernick. That ain't happening now. That was probably not going to happen anyway, to be blunt. That window is long since sealed. Sometimes the conspiracy theorist in me takes over a little bit. You kind of kill that bird, doesn't it? Yes. There's no he's going to compete. I don't think even if that was an option, or if the NFL didn't sort of step in, it's not like you could have like a high-end college quarterback who just doesn't translate into the NFL. There'll be piles of ex-quarterbacks who are going to try out for this, wouldn't you think? Who are half his age at this point. He's going to be 40 in 2028.
Set alone the side, does he want to represent the United States of America? That's a different discussion.
Well, he said he did. That's came from his mouth. So
sure, okay. Yeah, he had some issues with the country. But I could see like somebody like a Case Keenum or Doug Flutie or those type of guys that are quick on their feet. They can move around. They're no longer dealing with 7 guys in their face with hands up to 10 feet. that could succeed in that league that were, let's say borderline NFL players succeed. But I
He's
agree.
on eugenics. He could do it now. I saw those commercials.
Yeah, right. But yeah, Kaepernick, the moment has passed for him in terms of being in effect. I would think I'd let him try out. And we've seen 40-year-old quarterbacks succeed in the NFL one way or another. That to me, I don't know. I don't watch a lot of flag football, but mobility would seem to be more prime than maybe the NFL, where you could get a line and sit in the pocket. I think at flag, you want to be mobile and quick, but yeah, that's interesting
I
take.
think there could be money in a women's league. I really do. And I find it interesting, though. I'm not even sure how this qualifies as an international sport, or like an Olympic sport. Because my understanding is, to be an Olympic sport, you've got to have competitive countries on 3 continents. I don't see how this qualifies, but it's here, so here you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very interested to see where this will go. Obviously, if it's the Olympics too, it's going to be in August or July. I don't know when they're going to be doing this. So I think it was Dave. I think it was your point. Well, it's like a team's going to really want to say, okay, yeah, you know what? Just go ahead. You're fine. You can catch up on the routes later. That's all right. Playbook, yeah. Just take it with you. Browse it while you have a chance. While you're not sort of like in the Olympic Village trying to score with some hottie from Slovakia.
Whoa! What kind of show is this, Kirk?
You kind of knew what you signed on to, buddy.
Now, you mentioned a women's league, and I know the Super Bowl put some, or I think the NFL put some money in the Super Bowl to talk about getting flag football for women or girls more prominent in high school and giving them a chance. And I think that's a great idea and great opportunity. I mean, girls play contact sports like lacrosse, hockey, and this would be no more than that. There's certainly the athleticism would be entertaining, and I think it would be good to start that down at some high school, college levels and see that flourish. I think that I would almost more enjoy watching that than watching some sort of mixed mishmash of former NFLers, borderline NFLers, UFLers, college graduates that never made it play. I'd like to see some new names. I think women's sports is thriving right now, and I think it would be a good opportunity for them to kind of engage and get a fan base and get more girls interested, etc.
Okay. Chris, any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
No, I think that's a great discussion there. Dave laid out some excellent points. Started with the youth, build up to it, get the league started, and then keep the schedule. Just doesn't seem to fit an NFL 12-month season now, or 12-month schedule now. So bring back baseball instead.
Aren't they for 2028?
In the Olympics, I've not heard. They've bounced it in and out so many times.
But again, it's not going to be the best on best. So probably I won't be paying much attention to that either for that reason. I know the two of you wanted to talk a bit about the Indianapolis 500. That's not my bag, baby. So I'll just sort of like leave that to the two of you to sort of like give your discussions on that. And then Dave, you can tell me if that's the sportsman of the week.
Sure, I'll kick it off here. As I posted on X, the Palou show continues. Alex Palou, who's won every race but one so far this year, secured his first Indy 500 win, 6th attempt. So he has built now himself a pretty not necessarily insurmountable lead in the points, but he's well on his way to another championship. The race itself, there's so much spectacle before the race, and to have all that spectacle and then have to sit and wait for 35, 40 minutes to let the raindrops pass by was a little bit of a downer. But once the cars got rolling, the helicopters following around the track was really an incredible sight. Unfortunately, one of the favorites, Scott McLaughlin, warming his tires on the pace lap, lost control, was out before the race even started. So kind of took a little bit of, like I said, one of the favorites out of there. Palou really didn't, it wasn't like a dominant race for him. He came through at the end, which he's done several times this year, including the previous race, the Grand Prix at Indy. So his team just had the right strategy at the end there. He was able to get past Ericsson with about 14 to go and really didn't need to try to put himself ahead of the two cars running at the tail end of the lead lap there, Louis Foster and Devlin DeFrancesco. But I think if he needed to, he probably would have. It's just he was not going to be denied there. Before we started talking, Dave, we kind of asked about the turning point of the race. And to me, it was when Hunter Ray, who was leading at the time with about 30 laps to go, came in for his final pit stop, and the car stalled, and they were unable to get it going. A clean pit stop puts him back out ahead of Foster and DeFrancesco, I believe, and gives him a strong buffer between Ericsson and Palou. I think he could have won it. He was in the right position. He was on the right strategy at the end there. The car was running well. He would have had a little bit of a fuel advantage over the rest of the field there, been able to turn it up a little more rich. And unfortunately, what he said after the race was that they ran out of fuel on the way in. They just couldn't get the car reprimed. So just heartbreaking there to essentially lose the race on pit lane like that. So pit lane was more of a mess than normal this year. We had the fire in the Rossi pit. Rinus VK lost his brakes on the way in, ended up locking up the one that held, crashed into the wall. Robert Schwartzman, the pole sitter, also had a brake issue coming into his pits, actually ran into several of his crew there as they were all ready to service him. So it was a bit of a mess there on pit lane. On track, Kyle Larson, who was attempting the double this year again, had some trouble in about a little under halfway through the race there, ended up getting on a restart and ended up taking out two other drivers with himself there, which helped him get down to Charlotte on time, but would have been nice to see him try to fight his way up to the front and run all 1,100 laps this year. So overall, it was a fun event to watch. The best did rise to the top there, and like I said, the Palou show rolls on. So back to run to Detroit again this weekend here. Typically, the winner of the 500, because of all the media that they have to do the week after the race, tends to drag onto them, so they don't tend to show very well the following race. We'll see if that impacts Palou here this weekend or not. In Detroit, street course this time. So actual streets of Detroit that they'll be racing on, as opposed to oval or permanent road course.
Yeah, great analysis. I'm not a major IndyCar fan. I watch casually. I keep track of who's winning. I try to watch the Indy 500, although it's usually a busy day, busy weekend with Memorial Day. It's just insane to me, number one, how big the course is. I saw a post on one of the social medias, and I believe it's true that all 14 Big Ten stadiums can fit inside the infield. That's not just the football field, but all the surrounding crowd. And they showed them 7x7, just how huge it is because they're going so fast. You think, oh, they're going down this straightaway in 30 seconds, but it's going 200 miles an hour. It's just huge. And the spectacle of it. The second stat I'll throw out there that my friend texted me was that with the attendance at the Indy 500, every 1,000 Americans attended the Indy 500, 350,000 attendees at that event. So just an incredible spectacle, which Chris talked about. You lead up to it, you get all the pre-race pageantry, all the storylines. The race was clunky at first with the rain. I think that contributed. It was like people were losing brakes. Kyle Larson really didn't touch anybody. I felt bad for the two other drivers he took out that were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you had just the way it played out But an interesting point is that normally in IndyCar, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't see winners win 4, 5, 6 set of 7 races like that, like you might in Formula One. In Formula One, you saw Lewis Hamilton dominate for half a decade. Now, then it was Verstappen. Now, actually, Formula One's a little more mixed up, and you have 3 or 4 drivers winning races. And now you have IndyCar with a 27-year-old person that's already won 3 times, finally winning the big race. And it wasn't a dominant effort. Again, I watched the Monaco Grand Prix for the pageantry. It was not an entertaining race. The leaders lead, nobody passes each other. This was tons of passing, tons of pit stop strategy. Who was pitting, who was not. Favorites were wrecking before the race. Favorites were wrecking during the race. The pole sitter, as Chris talked about, wrecked during the race or got pit stops became just a chaotic thing that you never knew what was going to happen. It wasn't so predictable. And then by the time it laid out, you had the 2 lap cars ahead of Ericsson and Palou, who was struggling, not struggling on fuel, but questionable on fuel. But he was able to draft enough to the point with about 15 laps to go. He knew he had enough and just flew right by Ericsson. And I think he stayed behind those 2 cars the rest of the time, as Chris talked about, because he didn't need the extra space. Why go fight it and risk yourself? Because he knew he'd had the speed and he could do it. The only downside was I've seen Indy 500s where you see in the last 3, 4 laps, it's open racing, 3 or 4 cars, one passes the other, then they get the speed, they go back and forth. This was a little bit more predictable in that respect, but it was good that the quote, best driver won, at least the one that's won the most recent championships. He got his first Indianapolis 500 trophy, which is huge. First one for a Spaniard driver, which is huge. For the international sport. Sometimes I think Indy struggles to compete with Formula One because of the international thing. So all of that made for, to me, a really entertaining race. You never knew what was going to happen. Some of the best drivers were up there. Some of the best drivers struggled. The guy it was a Newgarden going for 3 in a row. Yeah, so he started in the very back. He made it all the way up to 10th before he had his pit struggles. So it was just one plot twist after another. With a finale that certainly rewarded the 350,000 fans. So it was fun to watch. It was a great American spectacle. Weather could have been better, but it kind of contributed to some of the chaos, I think. So fun race, really, really fun to watch for somebody that doesn't watch week to week. Looking forward to seeing a street race next week in Detroit. I'll be sure to turn into that. I like street races in NASCAR. Just a little bit different element. So this will entertain there as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then, one thing I failed to mention there, Ericsson, who actually came across the line second during the race, his car was found to be in violation. I think they said it was a spacer or something that was unauthorized. So they actually disqualified him in his effort. He ended up with, instead of the second place finish and prize money and points, he ended up with a 31st finish. There were a couple other drivers, his teammate Kyle Kirkwood, and then from Prema, Callum Islet, who also had a disqualifications because of failing post-race inspections. So I can't imagine the disappointment of coming in second, then having that second taken away from you after the race for something you had no control over. So
Does that happen often?
No, I don't really remember too many times this happening. I know that there was an issue last year with when one of the features on an IndyCar called push to pass, which allows additional on street and road courses, additional horsepower temporarily. That is disabled at certain times during the race because of coming out of
Safety.
It was safety, coming out of a yellow, coming off of the opening. So a couple of Penske cars actually were flagged for having that available, and then their drivers using it when they shouldn't have been able to. So that's that. And then I think Daly during qualifications had an issue too, where his qualifying time was cost. But really, before last couple of years, I hadn't really heard a lot about that.
It would have been really unfortunate if Ericsson had won the race and then you go to and have to read this. It's happened like Kentucky Derby a couple of years ago, where years later, or not years later, but significant time after that, a winner is crowned. They never got to celebrate. It's all questionable. So at least in that regard, that was
Horse cheated.
Yes. Well, there's been some where the jockey ran the horse in a wrong path, and
Yeah.
there's been some where the horse was later found to have been applied some elements that are beyond the rules of
It was the Canadian horse. They're always
drugs.
steroids.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
Ben Johnson was a trainer.
Hey.
He's not doing anything now. It's possible.
There you go.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to mention too before we move on here. Kyle Larson, Dave, you had mentioned about how he had, with his spin, he ended up taking out a couple extra drivers. I don't know if it's irony, coincidence, or whatever, but during the Coca-Cola 500, he was the collateral damage in one of the spins down there. So he was the one that ended up getting taken out in that race there too. So you give a little, you take a little. It's racing. It's what happens.
Yeah, it happens every week. You're in the wrong place, wrong time. Somebody spins out. That's what makes it fun to an extent, right? We don't like to see wrecks and stuff, but the randomness factor certainly contributes. Or else you get like you saw in Formula One, where a couple people in the back crash, but the rest of it is just follow the leader for an hour and a half and neat, and you get to see neat yachts once every minute.
Nice. Well, I want to sort of like circle back to something. Dave, you weren't here for our last one, but something came up when Chris and I were talking on Not In All In episode 6, where there was an accusation on a Chicago Sky game where Angel Reese was allegedly being hurled racial insults. And when this came out, I said to Chris, I don't believe it, not because I don't think that these women are not getting sort of harassed online a lot. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are tough on the keyboard, but would never have the balls to do that, like in front of them. And as Chris, as you said, if we didn't see it, probably didn't happen. And sure enough, the investigation came back, it didn't happen. And my thing to the WNBA is, I'm with you 1,000%. You got to fight racism, because I know we're 3 middle-aged white dudes here, but I think we can all agree racism fucking sucks. Here's what also sucks. Racist hoax. So you did this, you investigated based on a random Twitter account who didn't have anything. You just said, this is what I heard. Didn't record anything. Because why? It didn't happen. And I think all 3 of us, we've been to enough sporting events that if we heard anyone drop that, either our phones would be out to record that and try to get that person kicked out, or there'd be 100 other people around trying to do the same thing. So just a little PSA to the WNBA. Let's not overreact shit, because when it comes out this way, and we kind of knew it would, then it sort of gives a lot of far right-wing trolls an opportunity to pounce on you. And you don't need that. You're an up-and-coming league. I'm rooting for you. I know Dave makes fun of me for that, but I am all in on the WNBA. I seriously am. I am. I want them to succeed.
I want them to succeed too, and I don't watch many of the games. I don't watch a lot of proper men's NBA games. But no, to your point, at some point you have to look into it and close the case. So I get that, but I'd like to believe that they came to the right conclusion. Would somebody say something at a game at any sport that crossed the line? Absolutely. I go to a lot of Major League Baseball games, and they put out a statement to the fans before, like, this is not what will be tolerated. Things about race, gender, ethnicity, all those type things. Age, which I always find interesting, because I feel like if Albert Pujols is playing, I should be able to yell at him like, "You're old, like retire." That is in the same protected class as some of these others, but that's a different debate. I'm glad they closed it. I'm glad they can move on. I get the Angela Reese and Caitlin Clark rivalry. I get that they're different races, and I don't think the WNBA would benefit in any means by playing that up. But I think fans on both sides do get a little charged with that. So again, didn't happen at the game as the result. The investigation concluded, but
Right.
certainly has no place in sports.
Because that person would be Bartmaned out of existence.
Yeah, I would.
And rightfully so.
Right. Yeah.
I think next week, or when we do this again, I want to do more of a preview of the NBA Finals and the NHL Finals. As we're recording this, it looks like we've got and it's not set in stone yet, but it looks like we're probably going to have a rematch of Florida versus Edmonton, which will be fantastic. I hope that's the case. It'll be a fun series. Whereas in the NBA, we're going to have, I'm actually excited about this. It looks like it could be Indiana versus Oklahoma City. And yes, Oklahoma City won when they were in Seattle. But let's be blunt. This is like two fan bases that have never experienced an NBA championship. That's going to be fun. I hope that if Oklahoma City wins, they strap the rocket on the media machine to SGA. I really do. You need a young face. Chris and I were talking about that last week. You've got to have a face who's under 30. You know, because like
Steph Curry and
LeBron James,
Durant and those guys are.
I don't think they want Durant too much, to be blunt. But
well, it is that, but I think we came to like a North American because SGA has got Canadian, but a Luka or a Jokic or a Antetokounmpo, it doesn't quite have the same
they
impact.
Don't translate. Otherwise, we would have seen it.
Yeah,
we would have seen it. And, you know, it doesn't help either when your best player, Jokic, who didn't win the MVP, but was 5 years in a row, was either first or second.
And the numbers were right there with his other wins. It's almost just got like, we got to think about somebody who played on the best team and stepped up. So
Jokic has never had an all-star teammate ever. That's insane.
Yeah, I think this year, the three finalists there were truly the most valuable players for their teams. And if you were to take any one of those three off their teams, the teams would not probably make the playoffs.
Yeah. So I think on our next episode, we'll sort of like do a real deep dive and sort of like preview those. Unless there's something else that any of you guys want to bring up. We got a quick one here today. I love it. So closing off, I'll let Winnie sort of like do all this. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, make today count because it never comes again. Right, Winnie? Yes. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Night.